Welcome to episode 238 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I'm the host, Kim Newlove. This is my summer 2023 update. It is August of 2023. I hope you are having a great summer. My seasonal updates, like this summer one, give you an opportunity to get to know me better as a person. This is where I update you on my personal life, like my kids and my husband, my podcast, my business, and what I've been listening to, reading, watching, and playing. I realize this may be the first time you've ever listened to my podcast. So if you are new to the Pharmacist Voice podcast, welcome. Again, my name is Kim Newlove. I'm the host. I'm a pharmacist by training, but I'm not in clinical practice anymore. I am a voice actor and a podcast host. When I say voice actor, think medical content. Among other things, I narrate audiobooks for pharmacists, and I do medical narration for clients in pharma, biotech, and CME. That's continuing medical education. I also help pharmacy professionals plan podcasts, and I teach an online class about drug name pronunciations. If you have a project in mind, whether it's an audiobook, a medical narration project, or something podcast related, I am available for hire. Please contact me through my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. Why did I become a voice actor and a podcast host, you may be wondering? I was inspired by my nonverbal son, who has autism, to combine my background as a pharmacist with my speaking voice and launch my business, The Pharmacist Voice, in 2017. My son Craig helped me realize the power of having a voice and using it. What do I typically talk about on this podcast, you may be wondering? I have solo shows and I have interview shows. I actually have several types of solo shows. Hang in there, I will explain. The drug name pronunciation episodes are my favorite episodes. But I also have seasonal updates like today's episode. I do summer, fall, winter, and spring, of course. The other solo shows are about being a pharmacist, a voice actor, a pharmacist podcaster, or my career transition from pharmacist to voice actor and podcast host. Making a career transition has all kinds of content that can be shared. Now, my interview shows are much more straightforward. They feature a variety of people, of course, who use their voices to advocate for something, for example, public health, educate in some way, or entertain, like through books, podcasts, and YouTube channels, so that you are inspired to use your voice too. So, again, my interview shows are meant to inspire you to use your voice too. My listeners are typically pharmacists, pharmacy students, pharmacy technicians, pharmacy professors, pharmacy owners, pharmacist podcasters, and medical narrators. So they're voice actors in the medical space, right? But everyone is welcome to listen. If you found this podcast, I am happy that you tuned in today. You are welcome. Now, you can find the show notes for this episode on thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the podcast tab and then find episode 238. Let's dig into this update family first. This has been a huge summer for my family. Now, I define summer, by the way, as whenever my kids are out of school. As soon as my kids are out for the summer, I call that summer. So we kicked off our summer with my younger son's graduation day on May 21st, and then his graduation party, Memorial Day weekend, May 28th. Derek is his name. That's my younger son. He's the high school graduate. And thanks to him, it seems like summer just hit us fast. We had track season, prom, graduation party, and then on to summer. Derek went on 4 different trips this summer, one with his friends, all the buddies. So that was the first one. Second one was a church mission trip. The third one was a trip to Seattle to shadow my cousin Jessie. She is a construction manager out there. And one family vacation here in August. That kid has been busy. Derek also umpired baseball games as a summer job, slept in a lot as teenagers should, and hung out with his friends. We dropped him off at college this Tuesday, August 15th. I can sound happy about it now, but really I struggled with it. He's excited for school. We're excited for him, but I'm going to be real for a minute, and I hope that I am not going to cry when I say this, but oh my gosh, dropping my baby off at college created a profound sense of loss that I actually have not felt since 2017 when our golden retriever died. It was very similar in feeling. I have put family first always. I have been a wife and mom first, and a pharmacist, voice actor, and or podcast host or anything else second for the last 18 years. And I didn't know that it would actually emotionally hurt to leave a piece of my heart there at the University of Cincinnati. When my son closed his dorm room door and I walked away to the elevator, that was it. I had a moment. It hurt. Now, if you're a parent of a college kid who lives too far away to visit regularly, my son is 3 hours away. With traffic, it's probably more than 3 hours. I just want to set an expectation for you if you're a parent of a college kid who lives too far away to visit. Nothing can prepare you for dropping your kid off. Nothing can prepare you for the emotional hurt. But I'm telling you that I experienced this in case it helps you relate to my experience and feel normal because it hurts. It hurts. It just does. It hurts in a way that is difficult to describe. We're excited for him. We're not necessarily trying to keep him at home, but it hurts. I was very present for all 18 years of his life. We had a very good summer, and saying goodbye was just hard. And just like Forrest Gump says, that's all I have to say about that. Let me dry my tears and then I'll give you an update on my older son, Craig. Life goes on. Whew, that's hard. All right. My older son, Craig, is 20 years old and he has autism. He's at home still. He remains nonverbal, and I talked about him a little bit in the intro. He is nonverbal because he is nonverbal. Because I've watched this boy struggle for 20 years to communicate, I have an appreciation for having a voice and using it. Craig is very important to me, but Derek is too. And right now we're talking about Craig. So back to Craig. Craig remains nonverbal and he uses a communication device. He does a great job with it, but that is how he talks. Craig cannot speak. He cannot read, write, or speak. So, what did Craig do this summer? What was up with Craig this summer? He tried a summer work program this summer. Now, this is something that he's never done. He has never collected a paycheck in his whole entire life. The Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, otherwise known as OOD, gave him an opportunity to try working at a retail store. It went okay. He basically put clothes on hangers, he tried to organize shoe boxes, and the bottom line is he's really not ready to hold a job yet, especially not on his own. Therefore, Craig is actually starting back to high school today. That's right, my younger son graduated before my older son. We have a different dynamic in our house. Developmental disabilities change things. Now, as I record this on Thursday, August 17th of 2023, this is actually Craig's first day of school. What did Craig do all summer? He went to that summer work program, like I told you, just for a week, and then he went to summer school for 7 weeks. Now that he's back at his local high school, he's what we call a super senior. He has had more than one senior year, so he's called a super senior. If you're not familiar with the developmental disability world, it's a different world. Craig will be following a schedule and trying to learn new job skills and working in different job settings. He's going to overall have a very different school year than most students have. We live in Ohio, and Craig is allowed to stay in school here in Ohio for 2 more academic years. He'll age out at the age of 22. We're still trying to figure out what comes next. It is not easy for individuals with special needs to transition to what's called the next thing because we don't know what the next thing is yet. We have to figure it out as a team over the next couple of years. I realize that not everybody likes to hear about the challenges of life. We all like the highlight reels, right? But I will be real with you. It is a struggle raising an individual with developmental disabilities. Now, other than working hard on academics and transition stuff, Craig got to be a kid this summer, just like anybody else who has a summer break. He swam, he biked, he hiked, he read books with us. We read to him. He ate ice cream at the local shops that only pop up for the summer. And he went on our family vacation. He loves going on vacation with us. Craig had a really nice summer. Lots of variety, which he loves. Craig had a great summer. Now, speaking of summer vacation, I mentioned that while I was finishing the update on Craig there. We took a summer vacation here in August to do fun local stuff as a summer vacation. We did not go off to anywhere on a major trip. We didn't get on a plane, a train. We just drove and did local stuff. With Derek's graduation and all of his trips, we just didn't feel the need to make a long trip from home somewhere far away for vacation this year. So, where did we go for vacation? We started off in Frankenmuth, Michigan. Have you heard of Frankenmuth? It's like 2.5 hours north of us. We live in Northwest Ohio. Frankenmuth is Michigan's little Bavaria. What is Bavaria? You may not know this. It's a region in Germany. And we love Frankenmuth because I personally am part German and part Swiss. I was in charge of organizing the vacation this year, and I picked Frankenmuth. Now, we just started off there as a weekend trip, and we got to experience German food and culture, music, shopping, and there's something very non German there. It's called Bronner's, it's a Christmas store. We went there to shop. It is, again, not part of the Bavarian theme, but it is, if you don't know this, it is a ginormous Christmas store, several football fields large. And summer's their slow season. Summer is their slow season. So it was fun to go up there in August and Christmas shop. Who Christmas shops in August? Well, apparently me. Also, we did some sightseeing, like we drove around. They have a wooden bridge that's pretty that you can look at. We went on a riverboat cruise called the Bavarian Belle. That was cool. And Bronner's, the Christmas store at nighttime, has Christmas lights. So we saw Christmas lights in August. That was pretty cool. Plus, our hotel had a water park, which was really fun. We went on slides, we went swimming, we went in the hot tub. It was a really nice weekend trip. Then on Monday, we went to the Henry Ford Museum and Greenfield Village. Both of them are in Dearborn, Michigan. That's about an hour away from where we live. What is at the Henry Ford Museum? You're probably wondering. I would just say, in general, it's American history from antique cars and generators, the things that they used to power the plants where they made the cars, to antique things from the 80s when I grew up. Lunchboxes, cartoons, posters, music. There was a lot of American culture. We had some great discussions with our son, Derek. He is 18 years old. And of course, Craig looked at this stuff too. But our son, Derek, who is the high school graduate that's going off to college, he was looking at this stuff wondering, well, that's so dumb how you used to do things. But he doesn't realize that's how we did it back then. Like, calling people and having all these separate things, a separate flashlight and a separate phone and a separate phone book. And it's just fun to look at things with young people so they appreciate what things were like before cell phones. Again, great conversations with our son, Derek. What else was there? Now, if you go into Greenfield Village, they have the Wright Brothers bike shop. So, the Wright Brothers that were involved with aviation, they had a bicycle shop, and it is physically located at Greenfield Village. Believe it or not, Thomas Edison's home is also located there. And they have an antique, I believe it's a steam engine. So, an antique train that will take you for a ride around the village. It's not a very far trip, but my kids love it. They used to go to this thing called A Day Out with Thomas, like Thomas the Train, where they would put these panels on the train and it would look like Thomas the Train. They would play music and sometimes movies on this train. And they're such fond memories because it was just a really cool place to take a kid to go on a train ride and experience Thomas the Train stuff. Greenfield Village, great place to go, and the Henry Ford Museum, Dearborn, Michigan. Check it out if you're looking for something to do. As far as other local stuff, we also went to an amusement park called Cedar Point. Cedar Point, that's in Sandusky, Ohio. I think that's about 90 minutes from where we live, but with traffic, sometimes it's maybe 2 hours until our car is parked. So from driveway to parking lot, from our house to their parking lot, about 90 minutes to 2 hours. What is in Cedar Point? I have talked about this on the podcast before, but if you're new, we try to go there every summer, sometimes for Halloween weekends, which is in the Halloween season on the weekends. They have decorations, Halloween decorations at Cedar Point. But in the summer, they have, of course, the tallest, fastest roller coasters on the planet, or at least in my opinion, they are. It's an amazing place for like $52. You can get a ticket and ride all day. I'm talking from 9 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. You can ride all day. My husband and I have been going to Cedar Point ever since we were kids. It is amazing and it has changed so much. It seems like they keep building taller and faster roller coasters. They really do. We have a lot of memories of going there, as a couple and with our parents. And now that we have kids, we have all these memories with them on the little rides. And as they got older, they started riding the big rides. Now that they're older, they don't, and we don't like to ride the big ones as much, but we rode some. And we rode little ones too. It is a great place. We enjoyed going there with the kids, and this might be the last time for a while that we go to Cedar Point. With Derek starting college, and I don't know when he's going to come back. If he's going to come back, he's going to have co ops and summer jobs. I don't know. Who knows when we'll get to go as a family again? So we had a great time. And we stayed at the hotel right there on the campus of Cedar Point. It's called Hotel Breakers. We got to dip our toes in Lake Erie. We got to go in a pool and a hot tub and just kind of stay on the beach. It was great. If you've never been to Cedar Point, check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes. The last summer vacation thing that I'll mention is pretty simple. We went to our local pool. Our local pool. Unfortunately, it closed for the season already. Today is August 17th as I record this. The pool closed on August 13th. It's going to be hot well after August 13th, but they just close it because the high school and college students are out of the picture. They're at school, they're doing their sports, they're busy, they don't have time to work at the pool, and we don't have enough lifeguards to keep it running past when they go back to school. Therefore, we went one last time last week before they closed it. We have a lot of memories of going to the pool with our kids. They used to not be able to touch in the deep end. Now their heads stick up above the deep end. It's great. They're tall. My kids are both about 6 foot tall, which is cool. I am short. I'm like 5'3.5". But we have all these memories of them jumping off the diving boards or, just all kinds of things. They used to have a day where the pool closed. It was the last day of the season, and they would let dogs come in. And I can't remember what they called it. I think they called it the dog days of summer or something. And we used to bring our dogs to swim in the pool. They haven't done it since COVID, and I don't blame them. But yeah, so many great memories. So we always try to hit the pool one last time before it closes. I'll wrap up the family vacation topic, and now I'll say a few words about my husband, Nathan. Nathan has been back at First Solar for 6 months now. If you don't know the story, here is the 2-minute version. Nathan is a mechanical engineer by training. He worked for a solar energy company in Northwest Ohio called First Solar for 12 and a half years. He worked on the manufacturing side of the business. They manufacture solar panels. The pandemic hit in March of 2020. He lost his job on May 1st. So within 2 months of the pandemic, he lost his job. They had a reduction in force and he was let go. A few months later, he started a job with Amazon as an operations manager. Somebody from manufacturing went into operations. That's a big change. Way to go, Nate. Anyways, after about a year, he was recruited by a small plastics company called PTI Operations. PTI Operations, and he became their director of operations. Again, on the operations side, not manufacturing. About a year after that, First Solar asked him to come back, and he did. Now he's working at First Solar, but on the operations side of things instead of the manufacturing side. It's kind of interesting to make that change. Now, in my humble opinion, he has a lot of value as both a manufacturing leader and an operations leader now. And as far as I can tell, he's doing a great job and he loves being back there. Working in solar energy is a challenge that my husband enjoys. A challenge that Nathan maybe didn't enjoy so much was family pictures in July. There was nothing wrong with it. Nathan loves it when I set everything up. Our family photographer is the same photographer that does my branding photos. It's called Vanity Studios. I've talked about them before. I did a whole episode about professional headshots for pharmacists. I can't remember the episode number, but I will put a link in the show notes. I just tell my husband what to wear and when to show up. He's perfectly happy to show up and smile. But I can tell it is a challenge for him. He does not like self promotion. He is a very humble and quiet guy. But, anyways, we had family photos done, and I look forward to posting those. Check out my Instagram page. It is Kim Newlove VO. Kim Newlove VO. I should have those up by the 1st of October. That wraps up the update about Nathan. Now I will briefly talk about myself. For me, summers are tough. I put a lot on the back burner, and I don't want to sound bitter about this, but I am the ubiquitous support person for my family. I'm not complaining, but I am saying that you need to hear real talk. Pharmacists can be stay at home parents and part time entrepreneurs like me. You can have it all, but you can't have it all at the same time. You heard it here first. I personally put my business on the back burner every summer, and that works for my family. I truly enjoy all the summer vacation stuff that comes up, hanging out with my kids, and not missing anything with my family. I am very much present for my family over the summer. And what a summer it was. It makes dropping my son off at college and walking away a little bit easier because I know I was present for all of the things. Now that school's starting back up, I am truly looking forward to catching up on projects and the piles of stuff that I put aside. I have no regrets. The back burner was a fine place for my stuff to be. I'm pretty sure there's no way I'm going to keep this episode under 25 minutes. I tried, but anyways, I'm going to move on at this point and give you an update about my podcast. I am happy to say that this podcast has been very successful. I have tens of thousands of downloads. Comparison is the thief of joy. I am not going to compare myself to people like Tim Olbrich, who have more than 1 million downloads. I'm just going to say thank you for listening to my podcast and for sharing it with others. I appreciate you, my audience. You are my audience, and I appreciate you. This podcast is more than 3.5 years old, and I plan to keep a similar format. I'll keep doing solo shows and interview shows, but I'm planning to change how I work my guests. I would like to do no more than 2 interviews per month starting in January of 2024, unless I'm running a series like the Pharmacist Authors series. One of the 2 interviews each month, however, will be with a pharmacist podcaster. So when I have my interviews each month, if I'm only doing 2, one's with a pharmacist podcaster and the other is with somebody else. So I'm making this announcement in case you are a listener and you've thought about being on the podcast. It is going to become even more difficult to get on this podcast as a guest in January of 2024. I really wanted to do a series with pharmacist podcasters in November of this year, but I anticipate being very busy with other projects, so I'm not going to do that to myself. My husband, I'm sure, will appreciate that too. There are a lot of pharmacists out there who are doing podcasts, either independent podcasts, podcasts on a network, or YouTube podcasts, which you can only find on YouTube. I would very much like to introduce you, my audience, to these podcasts because I love inspiring you to use your voice too. When you hear what these pharmacists are doing, I know that it will inspire you to use your voice too. So that's coming up starting in January. For non podcaster pharmacists, be advised it's about to get more difficult to become a guest on this show. What else will be on this podcast? For solo shows, I plan to keep the drug name pronunciation series going, one episode per month. That has actually been a very successful series. Some of the episodes have almost 1,000 downloads individually. Semaglutide and metoprolol are the most listened to pronunciation episodes. I do not know what y'all like about the semaglutide and metoprolol episodes, but thank you for listening. For my other solo shows, I'll keep talking about being a pharmacist, being a voice actor, being a podcast host, and my career transition, which people also enjoy hearing about. And I'll keep doing the seasonal updates, one episode per season: summer, fall, winter, and spring. Just a couple last things about podcasting, then I'll move on. I started a second podcast. What? I started a second podcast. It is called the Perrysburg Podcast, which you can find at perrysburgpodcast.com. That's perrysburgpodcast.com. It's an informational podcast for prospective, new, and current Perrysburg, Ohio residents. Big surprise, I live in Perrysburg. Perrysburg's in the greater Toledo, Ohio area, and this is what I would call a hobby podcast. A hobby podcast. Why would I call it a hobby podcast? Because I'm not trying to monetize it at this time. I am, however, teaching an in person podcast planning class in September locally. So I'm accidentally monetizing the podcast in that way because my students will be able to contribute to an episode of the Perrysburg podcast if they want to contribute. I'm being paid for the class and I have the podcast, so I'm kind of monetizing it. Now, I'm bringing my recording equipment to the class, which will be on September 14th of 2023 through the 577 Foundation in Perrysburg. So again, September 14th at the 577 Foundation. If you live locally and you want to meet me or take my class and plan a podcast, come to that class. Check out the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com for details about the class. That's all for my update on podcasting. I know that was a lot. Now I'm going to move on to my business, the Pharmacist Voice LLC. Business has been intentionally slow this summer. I think I already mentioned that I put the business on the back burner this summer so I could be present for my family. I do that pretty much every year. A few jobs snuck in through the basement window, though, you could say. Unexpectedly, I had some opportunities to consult and I got paid for my time. That was pretty cool. I got to review some things, which is not something I typically do. One thing I did pro bono, and another thing, which was a website I reviewed, I gave feedback and I got paid for it. So if you need me to review your website or review your podcast and you would like to pay me for that, check out thepharmacistvoice.com, click on the contact tab, and let me know how I can help you. I have about 8 streams of income, and I'll just mention two of them that have been passively earning me income. As I mentioned in the intro, I narrate audiobooks for pharmacists. I get royalties from Audible for some of the audiobooks that are continuing to sell that I've done years ago. So that's cool. And I also get paid from my online courses. People continue to buy the online courses even though I'm not actively advertising that I'm selling them. They just stumble upon it, buy it, and I've got students. So thank you if you're one of my students. Speaking of online courses, the one is called Pronounce Drug Names Like a Pro. I teach brand and generic drug name pronunciations. But my second one, which is called A Behind the Scenes Look at the Pharmacist's Voice podcast, is a podcast planning course. Now, that one is going to have some changes coming up. Not changes in the content, but changes in the offerings. I'm going to have 3 offerings instead of just the one self paced online class. To that self paced online class, I'm going to add a weekly live Zoom based course that is also a podcast planning course. I basically, week by week, help people go through the content that's in my self paced online course. And I'll also offer a premium product that combines the self paced course, the weekly live classes, and a private launching service. More details on that this fall, especially with pricing and how it's going to work. If you're interested, feel free to reach out on thepharmacistvoice.com, click on the contact tab, and leave me a message. I will get back to you. I can put you on a waiting list. This fall, I also plan to start back up with a medical narration coach and see what I can do to audition for more voiceover gigs. I have not been coaching regularly with my medical narration coaches. I think I'm going to start back up with Debbie Irwin, IRWIN, Debbie Irwin. Now, I want to know from her, with the writer's strike, the actor's strike, and everything going on in the voiceover industry, what is this even a good time for me to hit the VO market hard? VO meaning voiceover. I might want to look at some other options like maybe podcast editing and show notes production, maybe ramping up my podcast planning business. I don't know. So, as far as coaching goes, I am definitely going to look into coaching again this fall. I have got to get through my to do pile from this summer, and then I'm on it. Now, as far as business goals, there are three things that I'll mention that I'm working on. I would like to start a monthly newsletter this year. I also need to renew my pharmacist license before September 15th. That is a high priority. And finally, I need to update my client intake process. My client intake process is a little bit of a hot mess. Pretty much anybody can book me for an appointment without even telling me their project, the deadline, and their budget. I need to change it so that I find out all that information before I let them get to me. We all have internal problems with our businesses. That is one of mine. It is a little too easy to get to me. And that reminds me, I attended the Metapreneurs Summit in Kansas City, Missouri in June, and I had a fantastic time. But when I was at the conference, I talked to my group, my accountability group that's new to me, and also to the leader of my session. And I learned more about how I can change my client intake process to qualify my customers before they meet with me. It was all good. I'm glad I went. I had a great time too, just, socially, having fun talking to other pharmacists and healthcare entrepreneurs. But that is the biggest thing I got out of it. I need to change my client intake process so that I qualify my clients before I meet with them. As far as the accountability group goes, when I was at Metapreneurs in our breakout sessions, I met with these pharmacists who a lot of them have been on my podcast, but we talked about what are we working on? What do we struggle with? And what can we hold one another accountable for between our meetings? So we're now meeting, I don't know if it's going to be every other month, but we met in June, we met in July, and we will be meeting in September to hold one another accountable for things that we said we're going to do. So I got to get cracking. Now that summer's over, I got to get cracking on my goal. If you're listening to me talk about Metapreneurs and you do not know what that is, go to metapreneurs.com. That's MEDIPRENEURS. Metapreneurs.com. There's a link in the show notes. If you want to become a healthcare entrepreneur and you need a supportive community, Metapreneurs is a great place to start. Metapreneurs.com. All right, let's move on. Apart from the pharmacist's voice as a business, I also have another job. I started billing as an independent provider for the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities this summer. To learn more about the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, visit the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com and then find the link for episode 238. I know that last part was not part of my business, the pharmacist's voice, but that ends the business update in general, the independent provider part and the pharmacist's voice. Now let's go on to my favorite part of the episode, an update on what I've been listening to, reading, watching, and playing. What have I been listening to? I love podcasts, audiobooks, and music. Because I do a lot of housework and I go to the gym frequently, I have about 15 to 20 hours on my hands every week to listen to content. Two podcasts that I've been listening to this summer are The School of Podcasting with host Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting. He has a business called The School of Podcasting, and he also has a podcast called The School of Podcasting. Dave Jackson has been my podcasting coach since 2019. And if you are interested in podcasting, listen to the School of Podcasting podcast. I have also been listening to the Mike Lenz VO podcast. If you're interested in becoming a voice actor, that's a good podcast for you to listen to. He talks about his journey into voice acting, and he also interviews lots of people in the voiceover industry about their journeys as well. The episode of Mike Lenz's podcast that I most recently listened to was episode 138. He had an interview with a voice actor named Tom Deere, and they were talking about AI voices. I find it very interesting how AI is affecting voiceover jobs. I'm in the voiceover industry technically now, so this is of interest to me. I want to know, do I now have AI competition? And can I use my voice as an AI voice? I would like to know all the things. This episode 138, got me thinking. As far as audiobooks go, I am still listening to The Bible on audiobook. That is not a book that you can read all in one sitting. Let me tell you, it is 75 hours long. I am in the book of Hosea now, and I have just over 21 hours remaining in the book. I still have a long way to go. Now, in case you've never heard me talk about this, I am part of a Sunday morning Bible study with my pastor and some of the other church members at the Lutheran Church of the Master in Perrysburg, Ohio. That is my church, Lutheran Church of the Master, ELCA, if you know what that is. All right, what do? We read a chapter on our own, or listen in my case. Then on Sunday mornings, we discuss, and then we watch the corresponding video from The Bible Project, which is on YouTube. If you don't know The Bible Project is an animated graphic novel version of the Bible. So it's kind of like watching a comic book version of the Bible. It's very modern. If you have teenagers and they refuse to check out the Bible, there you go, The Bible Project. Moving on, two audiobooks that I recently finished are number one, Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. It's a great book about leadership. Highly recommend. And number two, Everything I Wish I'd Known About Japan Before I Moved There, book number 2 by Steve Edwards. That book is about working as an English teacher in Japan, that second book. Book 1 was about living in Japan. Book 2 is about working in Japan. Now, if you are thinking about moving and or working abroad, these are great books. You don't necessarily need to be moving to Japan to get value from them. Links to both of those are in the show notes. Now, at this point, I don't have an audiobook other than the Bible that I can listen to. So, I need to pick my next audiobook. How do I pick my audiobooks, you may be wondering? Here's where I'm going to let my freak flag fly a little bit. And I will say that I have a 1-inch thick binder where I have printed pages, printed pieces of paper of book suggestions from Amazon.com. Where do these book suggestions come from? They come from all over. Personal conversations where I say, hey, hold on, I want to write that down. Or podcasts that I listen to, sometimes TV shows, my local Toastmasters meetings, and so on. I get book suggestions from all over the place. And I look forward to finding my next great read in that binder right there. All right, what else am I doing? I am thinking about listening to an audiobook that my son Derek picked out. It is called The Naked Roommate and 107 Other Issues You Might Run Into in College by Harlan Cohen. There's actually a parent version too. He told me I should read that. I think I might read both. Anyways, I love the title, The Naked Roommate. I guess that really, explains something you might come up with in college. I did not have that problem back in college, but anyways, apparently some people do. All right, moving on. This is not PG right now. I won't mention the music that I'm listening to right now. There's nothing new there, no summer concerts either. So let's move on to what I've been reading. I've mostly been reading books with Craig, my older son that cannot read, write, or speak. Craig and I love to read books together. My husband loves to read a different book with Craig. So Craig's kind of got books in both directions, mom and dad. We had started a book back in spring, I believe it was, Jurassic Park, and then I found out that there was another dinosaur book called The Lost World that Michael Crichton had written, so we read The Lost World, I can't talk, it's about dinosaurs. Then, as I was reading the preface of the Lost World book, I found out that Michael Crichton, the author, also wrote a number of books. One was Timeline. And my friend Carolyn, who's a high school English teacher, had also recommended that. So we read that. That one is not about dinosaurs, it's about time travel and medieval times. We finished it just last week, I believe. It was good. And now he and I are reading Where the Heart Is by Billy Letts. It's called Where the Heart Is. That is one of my favorite books. I've probably read it 5 times now, if I'm being honest, probably 5 times. It's about a teenage girl who gives birth to a baby in Walmart. You may have heard of it. It was made into a movie starring Natalie Portman about 20 years ago. Great book. Really good movie, too. I'm also reading a book by Dr. Jade Ranger called Mustard Seed Mentality. Mustard Seed Mentality. I really need to finish that before our next podcast interview. Jade and I will be connecting hopefully this month to record something that's on my production schedule for October of 2023. What have I been watching this summer? When I have time to watch something, which isn't that often, I often watch something while I'm folding laundry, cooking, cleaning, etc. If I'm not listening to a podcast or an audiobook, I am watching YouTube. My favorite channels right now are Mama Dr. Jones, the Chubby Emu YouTube channel. That's Chubby. Chubby. Emu is Emu YouTube channel. They have medical mysteries. I also watch The Holderness Family and Dude Perfect. They do trick shots and stuff like that. I'm also working my way through the TV series Scrubs with my husband. We don't watch that with the kids, just me and my husband. It's a good show. I'm enjoying it. It's medical too. Now, as a family, we recently watched the Super Mario Brothers movie. Very cute. My son Derek liked it most out of all of us. He used to play Mario Kart when he was little. If you can imagine this 3-year-old sitting on a couch with a white steering wheel playing the Wii Mario Kart, it was very cute. What else? Last thing here, I watched a lot of CE replays, so continuing pharmacy education replays from the annual meeting of the Ohio Pharmacists Association, which is also known as OPA. OPA was back in April, the annual meeting, but there were lots of CE replays. I can't remember how many I watched, probably 20 plus, and I was able to submit my completed CE at the end of June. Good on OPA for including that in the conference registration. I was able to get all the CE that I needed so I can renew my license here in September. As far as what I've been playing, really not much. I tried to play some pickleball this summer, but nobody in my family was interested, so I just need to find some people in my community that I can play with. All right, what else? Not much. I've been playing Ticket to Ride on my iPad, but we really did not play many board games this summer. Derek was away on his trips and he was umpiring baseball games, and we were just busy. So, not many board games this summer. I do love board games, though. I did, however, play pinball at the hotel arcade with Derek. So, that was fun. I did get to play with Derek. That was a lot of fun, brings me back to my teenage days, and I felt like a kid again. As much as I love this last part of the podcast where I talk about what I've been listening to, reading, watching, and playing, I really need to wrap this episode up so I can get busy working my way through my backlog of to dos. Thank you for joining me for episode 238 of the Pharmacist's Voice podcast. Please visit thepharmacistvoice.com to read the show notes. In the show notes, you'll find links to Frankenmuth, the Henry Ford Museum, Cedar Point, First Solar, the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, in case you're interested in becoming an independent provider too, some books and YouTube channels that I mentioned, my social media links, and more. Next Friday is my interview with Dr. Stephen Chang. He's a Public Health Service Commissioned Core Pharmacist, and he currently works for the FDA. He has had a very interesting 15-year career with the Public Health Service, and I'm looking forward to sharing our interview with you. Thanks for listening to my summer update today. I'll talk to you next week.